what was going through the heads of the prosecutors who decided to charge a 17-year-old boy with murder when all the evidence suggests he was defending himself. It's the Kyle Rittenhouse case. What a disgrace, a scandal, a perversion of the legal system, and an insight into how race politics, and let's face it, the old greedy vote for me politics too, how that makes people like these prosecutors look mean and miserable just after a headline, not justice. Well, I hope they're proud of picking on this boy, painting Kyle Rittenhouse as a vigilante who drove over state borders with his gun, looking for trouble in some distant town, willfully murdering 2 Black Lives Matter protesters and wounding another. And all without any excuse. In fact, he's a coward.
Said he brought a gun to a fist fight. And he was too cowardly to use his own fist to fight his way out. He has to start shooting.
What makes their efforts so despicable is that the evidence that's come out in court suggests that everything I've just said about what Rittenhouse allegedly did and what you just heard that Assistant DA just say about what Rittenhouse did, it's all completely false. Yet most of the media bought it, ran hard with it. Joe Biden bought it. He last year abused Rittenhouse as a racist too, a white nationalist protected by Donald Trump. They were all in it. Activists, politicians, journalists, trying to destroy this boy, 17 years old, just to make a political point, just to make themselves look big, and warning us that if Rittenhouse was not jailed for potentially the rest of his life, protesters should burn down the town, and anyone who believed Rittenhouse was innocent, well, they must be racist too. But now, of course, we've had the trial. The jury is out at the moment, considering its verdict, seemingly deadlocked, which is sad. A big worry for Rittenhouse, and not surprising perhaps, when even the judge is complaining about all the threats that he and his children have been getting from people who want Rittenhouse jailed or killed. But whatever the jury does decide in the face of this intimidation, the evidence of the trial speaks for itself and appears to make liars of so much of the media that never hesitated to throw Rittenhouse under the race bus. But let us resolve not to forget this evidence in the face of so many lies. And let me go through it. This farcical saga started last year when police in Kenosha, Wisconsin, were called to a domestic incident and tried to taser the alleged offender, Jacob Blake. Now, Blake didn't stop. He went to his car and lunged for a knife. Police shot him and crippled him. The media beat up the race angle and the riots started straight away. Parts of the city were torched and looted by the usual opportunists. The police gave little protection, and people who did try to save their businesses, like this elderly man with a fire extinguisher, they were bashed senseless. Rittenhouse lived in Illinois. And let's nail the first lie told about him straight off the bat. He didn't drive for hours to some remote town that he's got no connection to, a town in flames, looking for a fight. He, in fact, lived just 20 miles away. And Kenosha was the home of his dad and other close family members. And Rittenhouse drove there to help clean graffiti from a school. And then he says someone asked him to defend a car yard from the rioters. Rittenhouse had a semi-automatic rifle. Now let's nail a second lie. He didn't bring it over the state borders. He kept that gun in a safe in a house in Kenosha. And no, he wasn't out to kill, but to defend. In fact, he was interviewed in the street just before the shooting. So let's hear from the boy himself.
What are you doing out here? Obviously you're armed and you're in front of this business we saw burning last night. So what's up?
So people are getting injured and our job is to protect this business, and part of my job is to also help people. If there's somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way. That's why I have my rifle, because I need to protect myself, obviously. But I also have my med kit.
But it all went horribly and tragically wrong. First, Rittenhouse says he was threatened by a protester, Joseph Rosenbaum, who later turned out to be a convicted child abuser who'd been released from a mental hospital. and was angrily confronting the private guards, daring them to shoot him. And he was also photographed brandishing a chain. Rittenhouse said Rosenbaum threatened him a few times, threatened to kill him. And then he even chased Rittenhouse down the street, throwing something. Rittenhouse says he heard a shot behind him and turned. He says Rosenbaum reached for his gun, and Rittenhouse, frightened, fired and shot him dead.
I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski, and there were three people right there.
Rittenhouse then fled that scene and was again chased by the mob. Now, how terrified do you think he must have been? Remember, just 17. He's 18 now, but he was just 17 then. The mob caught him. He fell to the ground, still with his gun. One man kicked him in the head. Another belted him with his skateboard. Rittenhouse fired, shot him dead. Another man chasing Rittenhouse and armed with a gun first put up his hands, but then aimed that gun at Rittenhouse's head, as he admitted in the trial, before Rittenhouse shot him too.
It wasn't until you pointed your gun at him, advanced on him, with your gun, now your hands down, pointed at him, that he fired, right?
Correct.
Now the picture here seems crystal clear. Rittenhouse acted in self-defense. You might think he was very stupid to go into the middle of a riot, a boy like that, armed with a weapon. I wouldn't want to see a guy like that anywhere near me in a time of strife like this. But at the very worst, he committed manslaughter, not murder. And let's go back to that Assistant DA's obscene summary of all this. That Rittenhouse was actually a coward who brought a gun to a fist fight. What fist fight? Rittenhouse had heard shots. He'd been kicked in the head. He'd been beaten on the head with a skateboard. He had a gun pointed at his face. Where's the fist fight here? What on earth was this DA saying? It sounds to me what he was saying was a lie. And note, all three people that Rittenhouse shot, people who chased him, threatened him, beat him, they were white. There's no evidence at this trial that Rittenhouse was a racist or a white nationalist. There's none. That was Joe Biden's lie. And not only his, a lot of journalists should be ashamed of themselves, the way they've framed all this, invited people to pick sides in this racial divide. And a lot of Americans should be ashamed of a media which decided to destroy this boy who's still just 18 years old. And they should be ashamed of public prosecutors who closed their eyes to the truth and decided, whatever, Kyle Rittenhouse must go to jail for murder. The mob will roar and applaud and hail these prosecutors as heroes. But I wonder, how do these men live with themselves?